Today we are discussing about social action projects making a difference. Social action project making a difference. Writing for a local newspaper. Students studied the community water supply and identified source of harmful pollutants. They wrote an article for the local newspaper explaining their finding and offering ideas to help avoid future problems. Providing for children in the hospital. Students collected books from all of their friends and family and started at a library at a local children's hospital for kids who cannot go out to get books because they are too ill. Supplying school around the world. Elementary student sent friendship boxes filled with letters, school supplies, artwork, and other items to schools in Mexico, Guatemala, El Salvador, and Nicaragua. The project has grown such that 2,000 schools have sent supplies and computer to schools in need. Building awareness in school. Students become concerned with racial tensions in their schools and community. Minority kids were harassed and bullied on regular basis. Students developed an awareness building campaign in the school to improve conditions for all students. Defining social action and active citizenship. Historically, citizenship education has been understood in two ways as promoting responsible citizens through reflective inquiry and as active citizenship learned through social action. The responsible citizen approach uh, pur- proposes that schools can prepare students for their civic role by developing their ability to form thoughtful opinions on matters of public policy. Advocates of active citizenship agrees agree that reflective thinking about public matter is important but suggest that students should learn to act on their beliefs. Active citizenship challenges students to identify, plan, and carry out responsible community actions. Participation in responsible social action is necessary if students are to become participatory citizens. By putting reflective inquiry to work, active citizenship provides students with opportunities to test their ideas and learn about personal efficiency through social action. What is social action project? Project that engage students in acting on their beliefs to take many forms. Service projects involve students in volunteer activities generally for established community group and on an individual basis. For example, students may volunteer their time for a community service organization such as animal shelter or food bank. In social action projects, students typically work cooperatively with other class members on that uh, initiatives. They help to identify, plan, and direct. A social action project prepares students to identify, plan, and carry out solutions to problems within their school, community, and beyond. The goal is the goal is active citizenship through thoughtful, cooperative, engaging, and responsible action. Why engages students in action projects? TC2 suggests that all four central reasons to engage students in social action projects through social action students will acquire important abilities and dispositions. Since social action projects involve students directly in identifying, planning, and implementing the action, students develop important skills including problem solving, conflict, conflict resolution, and empathy, increase their understanding of curriculum content. Action projects provide a means of integrating text-based and experience-based learning where student understanding is deepened as they learn the con- contextual realities of what they previously considered in theory, enhance their sense of personal and collective efficacy, efficacy, enhance their sense of personal and collective efficacy. Involvement teaches students that there are responsible way to address issues and that everyone can play a role in social change, contribute to the betterment of society. Students learn that their actions have a broader impact on the society. Type of social action, type of social type of action projects. As indicated in charts, the focus of student social action projects ranges from school-based to local community to global. Type of students action will range from action designed in influence decision makers to action designed for direct impact. Type of action projects: indirect action, influencing those who have power to effect change. Direct action, directly addressing a problem and effecting change. Consider the example below the decide where they would fit on the continuum. On the continuum, school based. So here we have on the left side we have the indirect action, and on the right side we have the direct action. Indirect action mean influence those who have power to effect change, and direct action mean directly addressing a problem and effective change. School based: lobbying the school authorities for funding for after school programs, requesting the allocation of school ground for spaces for garden plot. And the direct action is cleaning the playground, launching a campaign to reduce litter, sponsoring a school wide information session about healthy eating. Local: influencing a food influencing a fast food chain to abandon polystyrene containers, lobbying city council for the inclusion of a skateboard park in a new recreation center. And the direct actions are, yes, direct action are filling a backpack with supplies of a person who is homeless, organizing a food bank drive. Global: indirect action, raising funds to support an agency assisting hurricane victims, uh, sponsoring a foster child in another country. And direct action are fundraising to build a well in a village overseas, providing school supplies to students in a developing country. Curricular connections: curricula across North America encourage students to analyze social problems, formulate thoughtful strategies, question assumption, and act responsibly on their beliefs as part of active citizenship. Social action projects are an integral part of the exploration of curriculum rather than an add on. The social action project became the vehicle through which students uncover the curriculum and develop understanding, curricula and connection. Planning social action projects, laying the groundwork. Pre-planning: teacher consideration before formally undertaking a project, including selection of suitable focus for the project and securing support from key parties. While it's important to include students in our originated social action, the extent of student involvement at this stage will depend on the scope of the project, the students' experience, curricular outcomes, and time constraints. Select a project. When selecting a suitable project focus, consider the following questions. Is it relevant for my students? Consider whether the project is likely to interest students. Is it timely and topical? Will it foster a positive outlook? Is it is it double and worth the effort? Consider the availability of human, physical, financial, and emotional resources needed to complete the project. Anticipate the likely benefit for students and assesses these against the expenditures, including time, that determine the feasibility of the project. Is it appropriate for my school and community? Assesses the project suitability in light of the various culture, religious, political, and economic characteristics of the school and community. Does it grow out of and support the curriculum? Topics studied in the class can effectively serve as the impetus impetus for social action projects. Be sure the project enriches curricular goals and builds on students' knowledge. Secure support. Projects that have strong support from key stakeholders as more likely to succeed. Seek the advice, approval, and support of relevant individuals prior to committing to a project. Consider school administrator and other staff that may be impacted, parents, relevant external agencies such as government agencies, business, charities, and international organizations. 5.8 Introducing ideas for students. Once you decide, proceed, and pre planning is completed, introduce students to possibilities and expectations of a project. The following consideration emphasize the importance of ensuring student interest and establishing clear expectations from the outset of the project. Generate student interest and explore project possibilities. The need to promote students The need to promote student interest may depend on whether the project is assigned or has come from the students. Following an initial classes discussion, one or more the following activities may serve as catalyst for building students' interest and helping students be- begin to explore project possibilities. Invite a guest speaker to present on an issue. Consider inviting NGOs, elder politicians, or individuals associated with the cause to personalize the event and issue. Use newspaper article, news clip, or films. Possible sources including CBC News in review, the National Film Board, and a local newspaper. For example, ask students to bring in newspaper articles in a newspaper article that directly relate to a personal experience they have had. Present positive model that youth their age have undertaken. Invite students to share examples of action projects in which they have participated through school, clubs, community groups, churches, NGOs, or share stories of successful action projects undertaken by your former students. Teach students the concept of direct and indirect action. Invite students to discuss the example in first section of the handbook, type of social action, and identify the extent which each exemplifies direct or indirect action. Respond to apathy. Respond to apathy directly addresses to the question why brother with the question what will happen if we don't bother. Why bother? I'm repeating that answer directly address the question why bother with the question will what will happen if we don't bother. Provide example of when people have taken action and others have followed their inspiration. Provide choice whether possible. The more control students have selecting and defining a project, the more committed that they are likely to be. Remember, support students in setting criteria and choose which project is the best suited for to their interest and skill. Identify student responsibilities. Once students have expressed interest in taking on a project, discuss what required of them. Introduce the main task to establish ground rules. Briefly outline the framework for guiding students through an action project. Detailed information about each step follow in the next section of this handbook. Explain that these four tasks, although pre- presented in a linear form, are not lock setup step progression progression progression, and it may be necessary to return to tasks previously completed. Emphasize that each task required thoughtful action and the application of critical thinking to problems and issues. Invite students to describe what each task might look like if undertaken thoughtfully and thoughtlessly. Clarify the problem. Agrees on a second solution. Plan an effective course of action, implement and evaluate the action. You may want to model consensual decision making as you establish operating principles. Three ground rules may be important to establish at the outset. Ensure emotional and physical safety, work for consensus, protect the right to withdraw, clarify assessment procedures. Explain to students that thoughts, their effort throughout the project will not be assessed only on the final outcome of the project, whether the intended result was achieved, but also on the extent to which students thoughtfully plan and implement each task along the way. Ongoing feedback from peer and teacher will support students in their learning. Emphasize that the purpose is to learn how to carefully and responsibly make decisions. Introduce the tool for implementing the task in the action project and explain that these tools will form the foundation of evaluation. A full list of assessment criteria for each tool appears in the chart uh, assessing social action later on this handbook. Project assessment tool. Reflective question. Background knowledge. Information needed to address each task in an informed manner. Reflective question. Did we acquire and use enough background knowledge for each task? Tool number two, criteria for judgment. Criteria for judging the soundest option for each task. Reflective questions. Did we base our decisions on the relevant criteria for selecting sound option at each step of the way? Question tool number three, thinking vocabulary concepts. Question: did we learn and appropriate apply key thinking concepts to help as understanding and carry out each task? Thinking strategies. Question: did we develop and use strategies to assist us in thinking through each task? Habits of mind. Question: did we demonstrate the attitude and values of careful thinker? Assessment possibilities 5.8 introduces and negotiate with students the means by which they will demonstrate thoughtful use of the tools and understanding of the entire action project. Below all are three methods of gathering evidence that would ideally be used in combination. Portfolios. During each of four task groups, compile a project portfolio containing previously assessed records of their process. For example, research information, graphic organizers, notes. Once the project is concluded, the group prepare a final portfolio to be evaluated based on mastery of the tools. C. Assessing social action projects charts. Individuals also submit a summative reflection, consider implementing small group presentation of the portfolios and inviting parents, teacher and relevant community members. Individual assignments, activity sheets, oral reports, reflective journals, and other forms of assessment are appropriate for assessing individual understanding and application of the tool. Writing their story. Students individually write the story in self selected genre, news articles, children's story, persuasive essay of a social action with an authentic audience in mind. Guiding students through the projects. Guiding students through the project. Four task comprises the problem solving model suggested in resources. The focus for each task is to assisting students in making thoughtful and realistic decision at each step of the process. Clarify the problem, agrees on a sound solution, plan an effective course of action, implement and evaluate the action rather than a linear discrete steps to be carried out in sequence. These tasks often overlap and are recursive depending on the nature of problem. Introduced in as introduced in the previous section of the handbook, developing student capacity for thoughtful social action involves teaching specific critical thinking tool is done describe the intellectual resources needed to carry out a task thoughtfully. A summary of specific tools for each task can be found in the chart Tools for Social Action Projects. At the end of this section, the aim teaching students to develop and use tools is to increase their capacity to reach beyond obvious and simplistic solutions, consider a broad range of possibilities, and commit to meaningful action. Clarify the problem. An initial task in social action project is to help students gather information, recognize the complexity of the problem, and articulate articulate a clear statement of problem. Gather information. Student cannot Student cannot think critically about a problem, an obstacle, difficulty, or deficiency when they know little about it. Gathering adequate relevant background information is necessary for clarifying the problem. Student may need help in identifying what information is needed and where and how it may be located. To begin, help students determine what they know about the issue and identify what they need to find out. If the needed information is not real readily if the needed information is not readily available, review with students alternate source for locating information, the internet, and conducting survey or interviews. Recognize complexity. Social action social action issues are multifaceted and interconnected across topic environmental, social, economic, etc. As students gather information about the issue and attempt to clarify it, assess them to recognize the complexity of the issue. There are three interrelated approaches to problematizing the issue. Explore varying perspective on issue. Consider varying perspective by looking at the stakeholder interest. These concepts may be new to students, so it may be helpful to provide definition a group or a person whose interest, values, rights for well-being are affected by situation. Provide simple example of interest and stakeholder. For example, discuss who is affected when students bring home a report card with poor grades. For example, parents, students, tutor. or other who worked with them and care about them. Then ask the students to explain the idea of stakeholder interest. For example, parents may have an emotional and financial interest. Student interest may include self-esteem, lost incentive and opportunities. Invite students to identify the stakeholders and their specific interest involved in the identified problem. Students may explore perspective through role playing in assuming different stakeholder roles and asserting their interest in hypothetical scenario. Search for multiple contributing factors. Focus on the factor contributing to the situation. Encourage students to look beneath the surface for underlying causes. Ask what factor or actions contributed to its occurrence. Once students have brainstormed possible causes, there are two ways of thinking about the hows or effects of situation. One way involves students categorizing the causes into different types, for example, economic, personal, political, physical. This this helps them to systematically think about the finding rather than the randomly list causes. Another way encourages students to look for interconnections among causes for any incident, a cluster of interdependent contributing factors, for example, events, condition, actions can directly or indirectly influence the outcome. Reinforce the idea of complexity. Clarifying a problem can lead rise to ambiguity. Ongoing reminder of the layers of complexity in problem helps students understand that any situation to a problem depends on the context. Encourage students to develop the disposition necessary to approach a problem thoughtfully. Suggest to students that some tolerance for ambiguity is necessary condition that seemingly straightforward problems can be complex and that there may be no one right answer. State the problem. Once students have considered some of the complexities of the problem, help them develop summary statement of the problem. What exactly is the problem, obstacle, difficulty, or shortcoming that needs to be resolved. Before doing so, review with the class the criteria for an effective summary statement clear. Would people reading it or the stakeholders understand it? Specific. Does the statement include some of the key factor to work on? Inclusive. Does it reflect or it is sensitive to the perspective of the stakeholders? Complex. Is the statement sensitive to the multiple interconnected causes? If necessary, present the following example of the effective summary statement. The Fraser River serves many functions. It is a marine highway. It provides recreational opportunities for local residents. It also offers food and habitat for many birds, fish, insects, mammals, and amphibians. The ecosystem of the Fraser River is at risk. The riverbank the riverbanks are covered with litter, wood, debris is stifling, wetland wetland growth, pollutants are threatening some species, and birds' habitats are decreasing. Agree on a sound solution. After defining a problem, help students decide on the most appropriate solution. This involves guiding students in generating a range of possible solutions, assessing the relative merits of alternative solutions, and reaching consensus on the best option. Generate possible solution to help students thoughtfully identify plausible resolution for the problem. Write the problem summary statement on the board. Invite students to generate as many solutions as they can, recording all answers without judgment. encourage students to think outside the box by asking them to revisit the factors or conditions contributing to the problem and to reach solution that have actually been tried by others. Shortlist options to help students scrutinize scrutinize to help students scrutinize the most promising operation prom- promising option. Invite them to create a short list of plausible resolutions based on few criteria, for example, probable effectiveness or any of the suggested option. Obviously, unlike the improve the situation feasibly and any suggested option unfeasible given available resources like time, material, and expertise. Continue to shortlist the options using the criteria until the students have eliminated the all but a couple of the options. Then involve the students in examining the merits of each shortlisted option, considering the pros, benefits, advantages, and cons, cost, disadvantages, or explore anticipated consequences of each prospective solution, short and long term, intended and unintended, and consider whether they will be negative, positive, or mixed. You may wish have to students shortlisted the options for the perspective of the various stakeholders. Reach consensus. Once the options are assessed, ask students to consider which option is the most reasonable one to pursue it. Help students agree upon criteria for selecting most defensible solution for the shortlisted set options such as effective, which option offer the best result for the greatest number of people, sustainable, which option promising the most lasting effect, availability of helpful resources over time, commitment and involvement of stakeholders, limited unintended impact on the social or physical environment, feasible, which option is the most realistic given at the available resources, respectful, which option best respect the feeling and legitimate interests of stakeholders, plan an effective course of action. After reaching consensus on a solution, students consider how proposed solution will be put into effect. This involves guiding students to considering specific challenges, resources, and strategies in developing an action plan. In apprising the plan, develop an action plan. An action plan guides implementation activities. The quality of the plan will be influenced by the thoroughness by the thoroughness of students' deliberation. Invite students to list specific action that must happen is if the proposed solution is to be carried out. A data chart may be useful thinking strategy to support students in analyzing the following steps. Specific action to be taken, available resources, both intellectual and material, required to complete each step, people or person responsible for carrying out each step, and when each task will be completed. Once the planning is completed, encourage students to anticipate challenges and possible solutions they are likely to encounter. Finally, ask students to think about the order in which each action should be implemented and rearrange the sequence of steps as needed. Apprises the plan. Once students have planned their course of action, encourage them to assess the soundness of the plan by consider criteria such as clear. Are the goals and tasks of plan clear? Effective. Are the process strategies like the lead to the desired solution? What might be some other effects of these strategies? For example, unintended consequences, etc. Respectful. Does the proposed action plan respect the interest of all stakeholders? Realistic. Is the plan doable given our time and available resources? Comprehensive. Does the plan contain and sequence the important tasks necessary for successful implementations? Important. Implement and evaluate the action. At this stage, students initiate and carry out the plan. As they as as they do so, they will reflect on the assesses the extent to which of the planned action is working. This involves assisting students to manage the progress of the project, evaluating the result, and debriefing the experience. Manage the project. Learning to implement a social action plan and keep it running smoothly may be challenging for some groups. Students will likely need to learn each skills or acquire additional information in order to successfully carry out the plan. They may need support in the following areas: acquiring expertise, anticipating emerging resources needs, being flexible and willingly adjusting the plan as circumstances warrant, tracking the progress of each activity and revising action in the light of ongoing monitoring of results. Evaluate results. Evaluation focuses on the project's implementation as well as the effectiveness. Discuss with the student whether it is possible to determine if the planned action had to be intended effect. Evaluation of the success of the project involves two activities: discussing the specific criteria to assess whether the project has had or is having desired result, and whether there could be any unintended outcomes. Collecting appropriate evidences to assess the degree to which each of the project tasks satisfies, considering how the evidence will be gathered, from whom, when, and how the finding will be complied. Draw closure. Invite students to consider how they might publicly share what they have accomplished and learned by selecting an interested audience and determining an appropriate means of sharing the project and its result. See assessment possibilities above. Encourage students to formally thank the various individuals and groups whose assisted contributed to the project success. When when project is completed, debrief the experience to students can reflect the effectiveness of group and individual contributions and about the conducting social action. Tools for social action project. Background knowledge. Background knowledge. What do students need to know in order to criteria for judgment? By what criteria should student judge? Critical thinking vocabulary. What concept will help students? Thinking strategies. What strategies might help students? Habit of mind. What attitude or values will help students? Background knowledge. What is the problem to be solved? What the students need to know in order to what is the problem to be solved? Who are the principal? Who are the principal stakeholders? Where is the problem located? When does it arise? Why is the situation problematic? How did the problem come about? Criteria for judgment. By what criteria should student judge? Clear, specific, inclusive, complex. Critical thinking vocabulary. What concept will help student? Problem, stakeholder, interest, symptom versus cause. Thinking strategies. What strategies might help students? Information needs. 5 W's plus H. Graphics organizers. Casual links. Role play. Interest inventory. Habits of mind. What attitude or values will help students? tolerance for ambiguity, inquiring attitude, agrees on sound solutions, what has been tried, what could be tried, what might happen, what interest will be affected, diversity of proposal, effective, sustainable, feasible, respectful, short versus long term consequences, intended and unintended consequences. And what are the thinking strategies? Shortlisted pro cons chart. And what are the habits of mind? Persistence, thinking outside of the box, open minded. Plan an effective course of action. What are the background knowledge? What strategies might be used to implement the agreed upon solution? What resources are available to support each strategy? What obstacle are we likely to face? And what are the criteria for judgment? Effective, respectful, realistic, comprehensive. And what are the thinking strategies? Task analysis. And what are the habits of mind? Thoroughness. Implement and evaluate the action. What are the background knowledge? What do we need to learn? What do we need to learn? Has each step in the plan been carried out? What are the effects of the action? And what are the criteria for judgment? Successful implementation, successful resolution. What are the critical thinking vocabulary? Intended versus unintended effects. And what are the thinking strategies? Implementation checklist, checkbacks, periodic reviews. Habits of mind. Preservance, flexibility. Assessing social action projects. Below are possible criteria for assessing students' understanding and use of tools for each task. Select the most appropriate criteria and assesses for learning using peer, self, and teacher feedback throughout the project. Background knowledge. Knows who the principal stakeholder are and why it is a problem. Knows where and when the problem occurs. Knows how the problem come about. Criteria for judgment. Effectively articulate the problem. Critical thinking vocabulary. Understands concepts such as problem, stakeholders, interest, causes and effects. Thinking strategies. Uses of charts and role play. Habits of mind. Tolerance for ambiguity. Inquiring attitude. Assessing the soundness of the solution. Background knowledge. Knows options that have or might have been tried. Knows what might happen and how interest might be affected. Criteria for judgment. Develops a diversity of proposal. Judge the most effective, sustainable, feasible, and respectful option. Critical thinking vocabulary. Understanding short and long term and intended and unintended option. Thinking strategies. Use of list and charts. Habits of mind. Persistent, imaginative, open minded. Plan an effective course of action. Background knowledge. Knows the strategies and needed resources to implement the solution. Knows the likely obstacle to the expect. And what are the criteria for judgment? Develop a plan of action that is effective, respectful, realistic, and comprehensive. And what are the thinking strategies? Use of task analysis and other planning tools. And what of habits of mind? Thorough. Background knowledge in first we read the heading, implement and evaluate the